So we'll torque all these down. Okay, I'm torquing this one. $30. As well as 30 on the lower one. Putting back on this little timing bracket now. Just the two little screws, two little tiny bolts. Tighten those up. These are 10 millimeter. I'll have to use a wrench for this one. I can't get a socket in here on this one, so I'll just wrench it in. Okay, we're underneath now. The next step is to mount the power steering to this engine plate bracket. See the two bolts up in there. So we're going to have to feed it through the little holes and then tighten it up. Okay. So what works pretty good for this is just using a 3/8 inch, 3-inch long extension, putting the bolt on there, and then feeding it through the little hole in the pulley. Is able to get that one in. The other higher one is next. Okay, the upper power steering pump mounting bolt to the plate, I discovered through trial and error that's done from the top with a 3/8 inch deep well socket. Yep, I'm threading it in now. That one's really tough from underneath. You can get the first one, the lower one, in there. This upper one, you almost have to go up high, go from the top, and then get a deep well like this. 3/8 inch deep well. Get that one through the hole and into the mount. Okay, once those are started, come in there. They can be tightened up at a 15 millimeter wrench from the top. This power steering under bracket here, it's another good place for a deep well. You can get in there with the deep well, 15 millimeter deep well socket, and get that started. Okay, going in for the other one. This one's kind of behind to make it even more interesting. There's some piping, some tubing. I got it started. And without the deep well here, this particular one is going to be a real bear. We're going to mount the AC compressor. A bracket now. Two smaller bolts go in the bottom. Two. And there's a longer bolt that's up in the back. So the AC compressor's been hanging out here for a while. And now it's time to mount the bracket. Okay, I got two smaller screws here on the bottom. Bolts, I should say. This other one's up on top here. Harder to get at. This one at the top, a little bit easier to get at for the deep well socket. These two on the bottom. Finish off with the box end. Okay, we freed up both of these studs here with the Torx ends on them by applying a nut on the end, on each end, hammering back and forth, and then putting a penetrant in there, back and forth, so we got those freed up. So we're going to be able to get these back on now. Up on top, of course. I do the top first. Got a long 13mm bolt up here. Okay, got that in there. The two top ones, 13mm ordinary socket. Here on this side, radiator hose is in the way. You get a ratchet in there. It's going to have to be done tedious turn after turn fashion with a wrench. Okay, just use a jam nut to get this down all the way. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just going to put a jam nut on since I don't have the proper internal Torx fit. Let's put a jam nut on here. Drive the son of a gun all the way down. There it goes. It's nice, and I've got it nice and clean in there now, nice and lubed up. So I'm just going to turn this down till it bottoms out, and a little bit further, and then I'll take the jam nut off and tighten the nut on the stud. Okay, I think we got it bottomed out. We'll call that good. Take off our jam nut. There it is. That should just come off. Now we can just bottom this nut out. And we're through with that little extracurricular activity there. This isn't a huge torquing dealie here. Let's give it a good... Okay, we're done with the compressor. Okay, next up is this tensioner bracket. We got the long bolts on this one. Turn them in and torque them down. I put 30 or 40 on something like this. It's a pretty stout bolt. Okay, I got in here. I'm using a 1/4" drive here because it'll fit in there. Okay, that's pretty much it. Yeah, this combination works pretty good on this one. Okay, so finishing touches on this. I'm going to have to do it with a wrench. There's no way you can torque something like this. Good and tight. You get a good grunt out of it. They're good. Okay, next we're going to get this serpentine pulley. Just because it's going to be easier to put that in now than later after that bracket is in there. The engine mount. 15mm long wrench here is going to do this job too. Okay, so putting the finishing touches on this. Now, there's no way you're going to get a torque wrench on this thing in its position, so you're just going to have to get it good and tight. A little grunt tight. Okay, so let's first of all get this mount seated. Look at it through the... Okay, there, it's in there. Now, that's very easy. However, in order to get this lower bolt in, there isn't clearance. So we have to bring it back off, get the bolt in its hole, and then back it off a little bit. Okay, so by getting it threaded in there to start with, and then tilting it with this end up, I was able to get it into the hole, that long bolt. It takes some jostling, it's not easy, but it can be done. Now there's one more long one that goes down here. Two upper ones are these shorter bolts. They look like they're maybe 1 inch long. So we'll get these all in there. I'm going to put them all in now and just all loosely, and then once they're all lined up and seated, we'll torque them down. Sold us 7 of them. The 3 that are on this part here are all the same length. So I'm going to torque these all down, get them good and tight. I'll check my book to see what the specs say, but I'm finding a lot of these bolts don't really have any listing on the torque specs on them. So generally 30 probably, if I can't find it. Okay, every one of these is 15 millimeters. I'm gonna get them all snugged up good. So I'm putting the final torque on these 7 bolts. My 1/2-inch ratchet. Alright. And I could not find the torque specs for these, but I'm thinking they're on the order of 40 or 50. So we've got one little lone pulley remaining here now. This is the last actual part reinstall. It goes over this bracket, the 15 millimeter. I'll put the finishing touches on this with a wrench. Gotta get a socket in there. There we go. Still spins, still spins. Okay, just to put the belts back on now. I had taken off the distributor cap, of course, to check the timing. So we'll put that back on. Just a couple Phillips screws. And one spark plug had been unplugged in order to put this up on top of the intake plenum. And that's back in place. To do a little inspection on my parts, on my fasteners. I had 3 egg cartons at one time. Every one of them just about pumped full. All that's left now, panel fasteners, a couple bolts. 1 bolt left for the radiator side timing cover wiring harness. So looks like there's nothing left. That and the belts. That's the old timing belt there. It's time to restore the wiring. First of all, map sensor, and we also had disconnected the distributor wiring. Snap that back in, push the little red locking pin back in place. Down here we had the air conditioning compressor. Plug that back in. And that one also has a little locker on it. A little lock on it that's locked back in. And there was one more here. And this is the temperature sensor. Now we have to plug in to the top of the engine mount. And there's also this device here, as well as a piece of tubing that had come out. Okay, I had to go back and look at my video, see where this harness went. It goes underneath like that. Tear out the tags. And then we have to put this little 13 millimeter screw back in here. There's this screw that mounts in the, or bolt that mounts on the bracket, on the cover that holds some wiring harness here. And so that's all I can get at that with is a little wrench, 10mm wrench. There, it's in there. Okay, wiring's back up there now, dressed the way it was before. Now we can put the upper radiator hose back online. There. This clamp is actually easy to reuse. Normally I like to switch to I find the other style easier with the screws to get them on and off. Screw type clamp. But this compression spring loaded clamp will work fine. Easy enough to take on and off in this location. Put it right back where it was. Okay, the coolant bottle, recovery and fill bottle. You get to put the hose and hose clamp back on. This mounts with a 10mm, small 10mm bolt. Okay, about all that's left now is to refill the coolant, which we're going to do. I'm going to take this thing for a little test, see if we have all the issues resolved. Thanks for watching this video.